How was your breakfast? Or are you waiting for after this to have your breakfast? Okay. I better get on with it then, because you guys look like a hungry crowd. Welcome. My name is Pearce. I am at present until the end of June, the artist in residence at the Empress Hotel. I teach classes and workshops all up and down the island in Victoria. And I would like to welcome you to Painter's Lodge. Because, yeah, no, go ahead. Give him a round of applause. Because this is fun. This place is a fun place to be. Okay, I want to see hands. How many of you are active painters? Ooh, how many of you are here to get all the trade secrets? Now we're talking. Why else would you come to this place other than it's the booze, the food, the etc. Okay, as I say, my name is Pearce, and my presentation today is called Everything But the Kitchen Sink, the Home Depot Approach to Painting. Okay, I'll bet you're wondering why Home Depot. No, you wouldn't wonder that, would you? Okay, the reason for Home Depot, because Home Depot has everything. So, even the kitchen sink, oddly enough. So, what I wanted to do, when I was going to do a presentation, because I love doing presentations for you guys, but when I thought about doing a presentation today, I thought, what can I give them? And I thought, why don't I give them everything? So basically, I'm going to show you, for those of you who are taking notes, I'm going to show you everything that I do for painting. And in only 1 hour, isn't that weird? Home Depot has all the tools and supplies, all the instructions and techniques, and ideas. So, why don't we get started with tools and supplies? Okay, now, I'm going to break this down into 3 different stores. Let's start with the art store. Obviously, by the way, I brought this just to get you started, show you one of the pieces. And one of the things I really like about this piece, when you get a chance at the end, I'll leave it here for you to come up and look at. There's very little paint on it. That's the weird part about it. There's very little paint on it. Anyway, let's get started. Art stores. Art stores, you get the canvas. Art stores, you get the paint. Art stores, what else? You get a brush or two. But one of the secrets of painting is figuring out what works for you. Okay, so this is my palette. This is a Tupperware container. The beauty of a Tupperware container for painting in acrylic is that you can just put the lid on it and go for coffee, and the paint stays wet. You don't need a wet palette. You don't need one of those sponges with the papers. I find the sponges with the papers make it too wet. You can't control the amount of moisture. This, you can control the moisture. No problem. I'm going to go off to my other mic if that's okay. Okay. As they turn the mic volume up so you can hear me, you got to really squeeze it out, right? Get lots and lots and lots of paint on there. So, and the beauty of it is, again, you just put the top on it. Now, another oddball thing, I see a lot of students come with these little yogurt containers for water. No. Bring a bucket. One of the nice things about buckets is when you're cleaning a brush in them, if you're going to clean a brush in them, they don't slop all over the table. But the secret is to only put that much water in the bottom. And the reason for that is you're going to want to throw your brush in there, and when you throw your brush in there, you don't want the water to get up on the handle. Because if it soaks up into the wood of the handle, it'll expand, push the rivets out, the brush is pretty well gone. Another oddball thing, occasionally I see students bring paper towels. No, bring a rag. You need a real rag. Something you can get a good grip on. Exactly, a rag. And of course, 30 by 40 canvas is what I always use, 30 by 40 canvas, and I always paint it black. And so to actually draw the image on the canvas, you'll need a pencil. I use your watercolor pencil because we're dealing with a substance that you'd like to go away once you start putting the paint on there. So watercolor pencil works best. Okay, now, oddly enough, that's the end of the art store side of things. I mean, buckets. Buckets were the first hint we're going to another store. We're going to the hardware store. Because the hardware store is where you get your brush. Although you can buy these brushes at Island Blue. All of my paintings are done with one brush. That's a Purdy 1.5" XL Dale house painter's brush. A Purdy. Put it up on the screen for those who would like to write it down. A Purdy 1.5" XL Dale house painter's brush. The funny story about this is that I used to use a 1.5" house painter's brush, and I kind of wore it out. And I had to go and find another one. And there was paint all over the handle, couldn't tell what brand it was. So I went to Cloverdale Paints. And I said, show me all your 1.5" house painter's brushes. And he says, well, we have these, and we have these. And I said, what's wrong with these? And he said, oh, they're expensive. These are $3.95. These are $7.95. And these are $14. Ooh, expensive. I kind of chuckled to myself. But this is the Swiss Army knife of brushes. And part of my painting demonstration today is going to show you how this works and how well this works. And yes, this is the only brush I use to paint my paintings. Now, just a bit of a caveat here. I do use a small brush for the signature. Okay, we got that out of the way. We're going to sneak back to the art store because we're going to talk about paints. I only use 4 colors. First one, cadmium red dark. Second one, cadmium red light. I kind of like the cadmiums. Third one, cadmium yellow medium. Now the odd thing is, the reds are really important. It has to be red dark, it has to be red light. You can't make a light from a dark, you can't make a dark from a light. But the yellows are kind of adjustable. It could be cadmium yellow light, it could be cadmium yellow medium. It's a little bit more adjustable. This one isn't. Phthalo blue.
Which one?
It's the only blue we use, phthalo blue. I know that Golden makes a red shade or a green shade. I haven't really been able to tell much of a difference, so it's up to you. And of course, you got to throw a little white in there, so titanium white. The limited palette, the beauty of the limited palette is that the way I paint is to mix on the canvas. And when you put the paint on the canvas, if the color's not right, you only have 2 other directions to go. It's not like you have to search through your box and find 10,000 different tubes of paint. And again, I'm going to show you that once we get going. Okay, now, oddly enough, we're going to the electronics store now because all of my paintings are done from photographs. And they're all taken with a digital camera. This is one of my favorite cameras. It's a Canon PowerShot. Of course, you know, cameras are up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. The secret of painting from digital imagery is that when you get the image, you have edges. It's like an instant sketch. When you're painting from life, a lot of people swear by painting from life. When you're painting from life, you've got this to choose from. And it's a little overwhelming. And you have a tendency to focus on the image, on the figure. When I'm painting, the figure is just one of the shapes. But at the same time, the edges and the negative space around the figure are another one of the shapes. And the digital photograph works beautifully for that. And again, I like the PowerShot just because it has an image stabilization, which means if you're doing a dancer in motion, quite often you can get those shots at a slower shutter speed. And the beauty of a digital camera is you can take 10,000 photographs and it doesn't cost you a cent, unless you decide to print them all out. And that's what we do in our class, actually. In my classes, we have all the students circle the model and take photographs for 2.5 hours. So we end up with between 6,000 and 10,000 photographs at the end of that. And the beauty of that is that you've got all these possibilities. You've got the ones that students were trying to get line up, or that I was trying to get and lined up, and you have all the accidental shots. And some of the accidental shots are just amazing. Okay, we're going to talk about what you do with the photographs. This is the photograph that I'm going to be painting today. And obviously you have to put it somewhere. So you got to put it onto a computer. Now, anybody want to look right there in the middle? There's my computer. That's item number 2. I'm a Mac guy, so I'm talking about Mac computers. Now the beauty, yeah, how many Mac people in the room? All right, yeah. How many wannabe Mac people in the room? Quick, no. Okay. How many accountants in the room? All right. The reason, okay, basically what I'm going to talk about now is a program that is Mac only. So all you PC people, you can talk amongst yourselves while we do this. Because when you've got the photograph up, you need to deal with it, and I'm not talking about Photoshop. I don't use Photoshop. It's not about changing the photograph. Because when you're shooting the photograph, it's about seeing paintings in the viewfinder. It's about creating it right there, just as if you were sketching it. But to get it up on the canvas, I use the ancient technique of gridding. And the beauty of the program that I'm going to talk about for Mac only is that it puts a grid right on the photograph, just like that. And then you can print that baby out. No, it's not iPhoto. In fact, it's Graphic Converter. And Graphic Converter is shareware. You get it off the internet. It costs you $35 if you want to pay for it. Computer, you get free updates for almost ever, and it's a great program. But it puts them right there on the image, ready to go. And then all you got to do is grid off your canvas and start drawing. When I was first putting my class together and going to show this, I wanted to do some research, so I went to the internet to do researching on gridding, and I found a site that was titled isn'tthatcheating.com. The beauty of the site is it showed me all of the great artists in history who have used what they called squaring to be able to transfer their sketches up onto walls, onto large canvases. This is a very ancient technique, and no, it's not cheating. One of the things I love about this is that there's a quote from an art instructor. I don't even know who the art instructor was, but I love the quote. He says, "Painting's easy. All you have to do is put the right shape in the right tone, in the right color, in the right place." If you look at it that way, that's true. Now, the beauty of gridding is it allows me to at least get one of those right. From then on, it's up to me what I can do from there. Okay, so obviously you got to print them out. I like this little portable printer. It's an HP OfficeJet H470 or any of the other HP Jet H470, although it's now getting to be an older model, so you'll probably find a newer model of that. And just for those who are cost conscious, how many accountants in the room? Okay. For printer paper, I always buy the HP Everyday Photo, which basically means you can get 100 sheets for 20 bucks, which is nice and cheap. Oh, shall we say thrifty. Well, you know, I want to print enough anyway. Okay, so we put it up on here. Now, one of the things I've discovered that's really, I mean, I used to use a yardstick because these squares have always got to be the same, you know, 5-inch squares on a 30 by 40 canvas. So what I discovered is just grab a nice piece of baseboard. And for those of you who can see it, just mark off every 5 inches. Then you've got this great big straight edge that you can just lay on your canvas and start ticking off and drawing it on. Another plug for Home Depot, thank you. It's exactly the same number of squares, yes. That's the trick. So for those of you who don't want to paint in 30 by 40 size, just figure out an exact number up and down, an exact number up and down. As long as these squares are the same as these squares, you're shot. Ready to go. You're ready to go. Okay? Right. Time for instructions and techniques. Now, one of the beauties of the grid for drawing, for instance, is that you don't need to start one place and work your way across all the way down. You can jump in anywhere. One of the things that I find is if I'm getting really bored or tired with doing a section here, I'll go pick up a piece here and start working my way up. And if I get mixed up, or if I start to lose where I'm going, like if, for instance, I'm bringing a line in here and it's not quite hitting where I think it should, I'll come at it from this side, and I will basically give a landing spot for it to go to. Yes? kind of a crossword puzzle effect. One of the things, one of the little tricks I discovered too, is that as you're looking at the lines, make a mental note or even a physical note of where the middle of each line is. Because you'll find that a lot of these will either cross at the corners or they will cross near the middle. And to get the line crossing in the right spot, if it's near the middle, it's best to know where the middle is, because sometimes it's just above or just below. And you can really get an accurate drawing, because it's about painting. So we might as well get an accurate drawing to start with. I did a workshop, one of my first workshops. I didn't teach this. It's basically set up a model, everybody was drawing away. I discovered, like, started at 10 o'clock, and by 1 o'clock, half the class was still fiddling with trying to get the proportions right. And that shouldn't be an issue. It should be just laid in and then start putting paint to it. So, my brush. It's time to show you how to use this, right? Okay, it's time. Uh-oh. First of all, make sure you squeeze out lots of paint, because you're going to need it all. This is not the time to be thrifty. Lay the paint out there, ready to go. One of the beauties of this palette, by the way, is eventually you'll get these gigantic mountains of relatively dry, not completely dry, but relatively dry paint on there. And if you want to start fresh, just grab a corner and peel it off. And you get right back to the plastic bottom. It's has a few extra goodies on it, but it works really well. Okay, technique, one of the other core techniques of what I try to teach is mixing on the canvas. As you can see, this is a small palette. There's not a lot of room to mix paint, and there's not a lot of paint mixed on this palette. The idea is to get things going on here instead, because this is where it counts. You'll find, if you're mixing the color on the palette, you'll find that you'll spend a long time trying to get the color just right here, but you have no reference. So once you pick that up and put it on here, you discover that it's not right. It's off by quite a bit. So you might as well do all the mixing right there on the canvas.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Is that black base a matte finish, or is it a gloss finish? It looks sort of fairly matte-like to me.
I buy white canvases with that are already white gessoed. I usually just squeeze out some Mars Black into a little yogurt container, mix a little water with it, and paint it on. I've started to add to that leftover tubes of phthalo blue and cadmium red dark, and just squeeze it in there. Yes?
I'm sorry, just to go back to your canvas.
Yep.
Do you purchase your canvas at an art store, or would you ever consider like Masonite from Home Depot?
You could do that whenever you like. I like canvas, and it's got a nice surface to it. It's got a nice bounciness to it. It also takes the paint differently.
And do you make your own canvases, or no?
I don't. No. I'm a do-it-yourselfer, but not quite that far.
Thank you.
Now, I find that making, like, stretching your own canvas, which is a great art to know, a great craft to know, it kind of cuts into my painting time. So, also, you'll notice in a lot of my paintings there's black. None of that is squeezed out of the tube black. That's all mixed black. It's all basically phthalo blue and cadmium red dark.
You don't use the black gesso for the back?
You can get black gesso canvases if you wish, yes. This can be black gesso, but in the actual painting of the painting, wherever you're using black, I seldom leave this as the black. I almost always go back in and actually put what I would consider my black into there. And again, it's phthalo blue with a little bit of cadmium red. And you just pick it up like that. Just grab it. You don't need to do a lot of mixing, because you're going to do the mixing right here on the canvas. And it can happen really, really fast. You can get a lot of the canvas covered in short order. Sorry, and then it doesn't look dead? Was that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes, if anybody ever wants to authenticate one of my paintings, this is probably not going to work because once I tell you this, it'll be all over the place. Is just take it into the sunlight, and all the blacks will glow, you know, in a blue color. So, okay, so as you can see, you could probably watch me paint black all day and just really get a thrill out of it, I'm sure. But let's move on. And I normally only use one brush, but rather than you sitting there and twiddling your thumbs while I run off and clean my brush and come back with a fresh bucket of water, I'm just going to grab another brush. Yeah.
2 times $14. Oh my God.
I know. I spared no expense for this. Okay. So, where shall I go from here? Well, let's start with red. One of the nice things about a lot of these colors is that when you start putting one in, you can get it pretty well filled in and have a whole lot of the canvas covered. But then you got a lot of paint in your bristles. The secret is not wash your brush. Find the next color that's close to it but needs another color to modify it. In other words, let's go up into the face here. So let's put a little yellow with it. Yellow with what I've just been putting in there. This is partly why you mix on the canvas, is because there's no reason to go and clean your brush, mix up another color there, and start putting it in here, because you don't need to. All you need to do is use what you already have on your brush to modify what you've already got on the canvas. And the beauty of acrylic paint, unlike oils or watercolors, is that they don't get muddy if you work them too much. They can appear muddy, and then you add color, and away you go.
You don't use any medium.
No medium. No medium. Just large. Just small. So anyway, enough of that joke. No, I don't use any medium. If I need to thin it, I'll use water. And in fact, the secret of getting these paintings to work is to start straight out of the tube. I like tubes as opposed to jars. Jars, it's about the texture. Squeeze it out of the tube. It's very mayonnaise-like. Get it in the jar. It's an awful lot peanut buttery. And you know how hard it is to spread peanut butter on a nice white piece of bread. It kind of rips up the surface, right? Yeah. But spread mayonnaise on a nice white piece of bread. It just flows. Isn't that a lovely image? There we go. Okay. But, where am I? Oh, I remember now. Okay. Also, you'll notice how I'm holding the brush. Always working with the point. In case you didn't see it when it was new, it's a chisel tip brush, so there is a point. So I always work with the pointy end away. Seldom like this unless I'm doing a large area. Always pointy tip down. And the beauty of that, everybody says, that's such a big brush. But that's not. That's a small brush. And one of the beauties of this brush, as I say, it's the Swiss Army knife of brushes. As soon as you start using it that way, the hairs split like that. Those of you who can see that?
Yeah.
Once it splits like that, this becomes a line. So that if you want to put, let me see where I can put this. If you want to put a line on the canvas, you can make a nice, tiny little line. With this one brush. If you want to make it even smaller, you just grab a little bit of water, and you can make it an even lighter line, like that. It's like magic, exactly. But this is the brush. The beauty of this brush as well, if you want to paint into an area, you can paint sideways. You can also push with it, because you get some interesting effects as the bristles spread out. Put a little yellow down in here. A little bit more yellow, right down in there. Yes, you can scrub with it. You can scrub with the tips of the bristles. You can scrub with the back edge, where the paint's in the back edge of the bristles, depending on how wet or dry the paint is.
It's super resilient, isn't it?
Yes, it's super resilient. It's a nylon polyester blend fibers in the bristles. The beauty of that is to wash it, you just run it under a tap. It cleans up completely. And if you really want to, it does great baseboards. Now, one of the things, again, about painting or mixing on the canvas is you have to really go for it, but you have to follow what you've got in your photo reference. That's one of those kind of oddball things about art today. You know, there's a whole lot of this sort of free approach to art. It's all about creativity, right? I took a creativity class up at Haven. Anybody been to Haven?
Yeah, on Gabriel.
Yeah, it's on Gabriola. That's a great place. They had this class called Creativity. One of the aspects of it was ballroom dancing. So we're learning the steps to ballroom dancing, taught by this great instructor who was a sculptor and a great ballroom dancer. So one of the students says, how is learning all these tight steps creative? And his response was wonderful. He says, once you learn the steps, you can be creative within it. And that's one of the things about my technique. It's about following this. And when you're following this, you can be creative within it. You create, it's not about every individual brushstroke saying, yes, I did that. It's about every brushstroke working together to create a feeling. So there is structure, just as there, you know, way back in the good old days, it was all about structure, and then they got a little carried away. There's structure, but there's structure to work toward creativity. So that's one of the tough parts about my class is following what's in front of you. It would be very similar to standing out on a great big cliff and painting a landscape. You spend a long time to get to the cliff. You set up on the cliff. You're standing there in the pouring rain and the wind, and mosquitoes all around you. Although not a lot of mosquitoes when it's pouring rain. But anyway, yeah. But that's in front of you, so you want to paint that. So this is in front of you. You want to paint this. Now, the problem with mixing on the canvas, again, let's go back to mixing on the canvas. The problem with mixing on the canvas is whatever color you come up with here is only going to be relevant in that area. So if you follow the imagery, let's just pull this up here. If you follow the imagery, you see how it goes from light to slightly darker red all the way up. So to do that, you actually have to keep going back to the photo reference to know where you are first, and then keep adding the color that you need to add to what you already have on the canvas and on your brush to make it work. And you can go back and forth. You can go from light to dark and go back into the lights. Notice I've just gone from the reds back to the yellows to work my way down. I'm not using any whites, yes. You use whites where you need to use whites. Often in flesh tones, there's a pastel-y effect to the surface of them. That's where you start to add a little bit of white. Or, obviously, in places here, for instance, there's some white there. Or places on the forehead, there's some white there. But white isn't used as a base. You try and find as many other ways to get the highlights to work before you start adding the white. Any other questions, by the way? Just blurt them out if you need to. Yes?
You start just painting when you add water.
Ah, paint when you add water. Right. You get the whole thing blocked in. Let's start with that. You get the whole thing blocked in. I don't think that's going to happen this morning. But you get the whole thing blocked in basically with squeeze out of the tube, a little bit of water if you need to make the paint flow better. And then you go back in again and again and again. There's this odd idea that the first brush stroke has to be the last. And what I try to teach is the first brush stroke is only the first brush stroke. You always go back, or almost always go back, and modify it. and bring it back together. How many have difficulty with acrylics because it dries so fast? Oh yeah. So for those of you who are used to painting in oils and have difficulty with acrylics because they dry so fast, because you're used to blending wet into wet, the secret is to leave it till it dries and then put a light coat of other color over top to modify it and feather it into the dry. So you're always painting wet over dry, wet over dry, wet over dry. And as you're painting wet over dry, as the painting progresses, you use more and more water so that eventually the paint will go on almost like a watercolor, like back up in some of these highlights in the hair, for instance. They go on in a very light mixture, and again, mostly a watery effect. What have we got for time? Okay, I can do a little bit more here because I want to talk about some other stuff. Remember I was going to give you everything today? I don't want to get hung up on just painting. Oh, it's boring. Because for me, painting is a means to an end. How many would, put up your hand, how many would say that you really enjoy painting? Okay, put up your hand. How many would say painting is like pulling teeth? Oh, good. Because I'm like Bilbo Baggins. Remember Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit? He went out, he hated the whole concept of going out on these adventures. But at the end of the book, he absolutely loved having had the adventures. I absolutely love having done the painting. It is terrifying to do the painting. Because the painting has a mind of its own. It will only tell me what it needs to tell me. And my job is to listen to it, is to put the paint on the way it's dictating it, start working with the way it works together on the canvas, and stop when it says stop.
Excuse me.
I had the experience of doing a portrait of a friend of mine. And normally, my paintings take between 6 and 8 hours to do. So I set up this portrait, and it took me 45 minutes to get it to a certain point. And I stood back and looked at it, and it was perfect. And the next thought was, that wasn't long enough. And from then on, every brush stroke screwed it up. And then every brush stroke to fix that brush stroke screwed it up. Because I didn't listen to the canvas. It told me to stop, I didn't listen. That's, again, the reason I keep putting this baby up. I'm really tickled pink with this one, because I actually listened to this one. There's so many spots in here where the canvas is just blaring on through. But it doesn't need any more. It works. What was I going to do? Right, I'm going to put more paint on. And then we're going to talk about a few other aspects of art.
You're going to show us how you do
The next,
watery part?
the next, and the next, and the next. The issue with doing the next watery part is that this all has to be dry for me to do that. So we're going to talk about it, but I won't necessarily show it to you. Okay? So let me just get some more paint on here first. Get a little more in here. Funny, I was going to say if you take my class. When you take my class, you're going to hear the weirdest things in my class, like paint by numbers. One of the things that I encourage you to do is see the painting as a collection of shapes, not as a head that needs to be finished, or a face that needs to be finished, or a hand, or a rose, or a whatever that needs to be finished. I want you to see them as a collection of shapes. So I encourage you, as I tell my class, if you have number 6 on your brush, paint everything that's number 6. It's a very paint by numbers approach in that respect. And what I mean by that is, on this painting, for instance, I would paint all the blacks, all of them, including this black, and this black, and that black, and that black. And then you start seeing the painting as a collection of shapes. And a painting is really only a collection of relationships between shapes and colors. Your job isn't to create a face. Your job isn't to create a figure. Your job is to create a light and a dark and a mid-tone that work together, that give the impression of a face or a figure. So as soon as you kind of get that clear, then it's much easier to do it. Hands up, how many think that painting a face is the hardest thing to paint? Because that's sort of the classic, right? Often it's a really hard thing to paint because we have a psychological block about painting someone's face, because we have this feeling that they're not going to like it. If you go out there and paint a tree, the tree isn't going to say, wait a minute, my branch isn't there. But when you approach it as a collection of shapes, it's far less scary, because everything is just a collection of shapes and colors anyway. Okay, I may come back to this, but let me talk about other things, because it's time to talk about other things. Eventually, this whole painting will get painted. Eventually, it will get brought together. But a painting, I think, should always transcend being a painting. So I want to talk about washes. And again, this gets right down to the watery end of things. You know, you paint with an oil painting type technique. You put a little sort of more watercolor technique as you go, because you use more water, build it up. But eventually, the painting may sit there as a painting and not say, I am an entity in space. And so washes are used to place things in space so that they have a sense that they transcend being just paint on a canvas. So let's see if this works. There's a painting. But that's not what I wanted. What I want is that to transcend being paint on canvas. That also isn't exactly the lighting effect of the photo reference that really drew me. So what we're going to do is put some washes on this. And there it is with some washes. Everybody see that? Kind of hard to see over there, I know, sorry. Hard to even see that. Good, hang on a second. You're right, it is hard to see that.
Are you using wash as a synonym for a glaze?
I'm using wash as a synonym for a glaze, yes. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes, wash is a synonym for a glaze. Except I again use no mediums whatsoever. It's just water.
Oh.
Just water. Now, for the purists in the crowd, you'll say, "Holy mackerel!" Everybody says, "Do not use a lot of water with acrylic because then you just get the medium floating on the pigment floating. There's no medium left to stick it to the surface." And I say, yes, that's true. The pigment does stay on the surface, but it's delicate like a watercolor. You wouldn't wash a watercolor. So if you really want it to be solid, you can put a clear acrylic glaze over top later. But let me just go back. So there's the painting. We do some washes on it. There's the lighting effect. See how things suddenly became more three-dimensional? And that particular wash is a blue and a dark red. Separately, two different washes were put over top of that. Only in certain places to push things back, bring things forward. As you push things back, other things come forward.
So you begin with the blue or the red?
It really depends. Again, I have no rules other than you must use that brush.
Can you just go back to the other shot for a second, just so we can compare where you first?
Yep. There it is as a painting. There it is with its first two washes on it. Now, one of the things that I find a lot of students are fret about getting the color right. There's a point where you don't have to get the color exactly right, because you can modify the color. This worked really well for me to a point, but it didn't have the warmth that the photo reference that I wanted out of the photo reference. So I did another couple of washes on it. And there. Did you see the difference between that and that? And that has yellows and reds and light red washes on it.
And just in certain areas.
And just in certain areas, yes. Yes. So often you discover what areas, look at this, I have a spotlight. Okay. You discover what areas by looking at the photo reference. And when you're looking at the photo reference, you open up to the possibilities of the colors that are there. If, for instance, it is a red area, like here, what you do is you open up to say, yeah, that's red, but are there any other colors glowing out of that? Like maybe a light blue or something, or a yellow. And those are the colors you use to wash, because you're tinting it. And washes are never, well, washes are, as I say, there's no formula. Washes aren't the last, washes aren't the first. You put a wash on, if that works to a point, that's great. If you need to accentuate something else, you go back in with real paint. It's a dance. It's a dance with the image.
Nicholas, can I ask you, this might sound crazy, but since I've never done it this way, does it make a difference whether you put the yellow first and then the light red or vice versa? Do you get a different effect?
You probably get a different effect, but I doubt if it makes, again, you put on what you need. I'm telling you what I put on here. I'm not saying that that's what I would have necessarily put on there in any other circumstances.
The light red, is that lightened with white?
No. Whenever I say light red, that's the cadmium red light, all by itself. Whenever you do a wash, you never use white because white makes it a flat color. It takes away from its transparency. The beauty of acrylics is it's relatively transparent when you get it thin enough. So a lot of these colors are over top the other colors. The other colors are coming through. Especially the cadmiums. And the blues, the yellows, they all work very well when you get them wet enough. The trick is to make it red water as opposed to red paint. So you have to put enough water with it.
When you're putting on those washes,
yes?
Do you mix the wash first?
The question is, when I'm putting on the wash, do I mix the wash first? I get a wet brush right out of the bucket, clean water, clean brush, clean palette. I pick the brush right up out of the bucket, grab a small dab of paint, and go straight to the canvas with it. And for those of you who were here when 4 years ago when I did a painting demonstration, it's always fascinating to do a painting demonstration doing this part of it. Because there's a go through the crowd when I put this big glob of red paint in the middle of something that's already kind of resolved. But then you put water in with it, you move it around, and it suddenly becomes just this light. You don't even really see the color. You just notice that things have changed. So it doesn't absolutely obliterate or change any of the other colors other than just a slight color modification. Okay, any other questions about washes? Right, let's move on. Remember, I was going to give you everything. Okay, let's move on. Everything. Let's go to ideas. One of the things that Home Depot does is give you ideas as to what to do. So let's talk about some artistic... Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about some artistic ideas. Okay? How about this one? What is art? Hands up. Who knows an answer to that question? I took a class up at UVic called the Philosophy of Art. And at the beginning of the class, they said, okay, we're going to try and answer the two questions. What is art? What is good art? And it was a year-long class. Come Christmas, professor comes in one morning and says, I suppose you've realized there are no answers to those questions. But what I realized is that as an artist, as I have to come up with my answer to that question to do whatever it is I do. Because no matter what I put on the canvas, it has to be art to me. So I have to know what the definition of that is. So I always throw that out in my class, because I want everybody to think about that. I want everybody to think about what their own personal answer is to that question. Because your answer to that question is what drives you to do what you do when you're painting. Okay, next question. much more fun question. What is feedback? No, what is good art? And that one's even tougher. Because we all have a sense of what art is. But you can look at a painting here that, yeah, we'll call that art. You look at a painting over here, yeah, we'll call that art. But you know this one's good. And this one is, it's just barely art. What's the difference?
Well,
That in itself is what's going to be driving you. Yes?
well, if one piece of art speaks to you and you feel emotionally involved in it, then I would call it art. And if they look at another thing too, and it looks maybe like a couple of commercial on TV or something.
Yes? Okay.
And I think, well, they tried.
They tried. So would you call that art or good art?
I don't know if I would call it art.
Okay. We got that one covered. No. These are the two fundamental questions that I think every artist, either consciously or unconsciously, has to ask themselves when they're painting, when they're knitting, even when they're doing whatever art form they're doing, because those are the two questions that take us where we're going. Any comments on those questions? Any questions on those questions? 1,000 questions on those questions? Okay. It's always interesting because students always try and answer that outright. And I know for me, there is no answer I could write down for either one of those questions. I just know inside when it feels right and when it doesn't feel right. Okay? Let's go to another question. Who am I painting for? Yeah, I heard a yeah over there. Who am I painting for? That basically goes right along with what is art, what is good art. Because I think a lot of us paint for someone else. And we get into trouble. Because we don't like it, but we hope they will. Any comments on that? Everybody's going, Sounds like everybody understands that one. Yes?
I'd like to know how many of our artists here have sold a painting at a show or whatever that they've absolutely hated and wondered why the person bought it.
Okay, hands up. How many have sold a painting that they've absolutely hated? Okay, let's modify that. How many have sold a painting they really didn't like of their own? There we go. That's more common. Okay. The oddest thing used to happen to me, I'd bring people down to the studio and I'd set up my best paintings. And they go, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, oh, that's not bad. And then they'll say, do you have anything else? There's a stack in the corner, right? So they'll go, oh, I like this one. And of course, I'm going, you do? It really doesn't matter who we're painting for. But let's put this forward, that whoever it is, whoever I'm painting for, I should at least be first on the list. Can we agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. That is a dangerous question, though, because anytime that I get into trouble doing a painting, anytime that I get to the point where I'm going, ooh, I'm not so sure about this, I immediately turn to my wife and say, what do you think? And it's because I'm trying to get her to tell me whether it's good. And if I can't figure out whether it's good or not, that brings me immediately to comfort levels. Anybody heard of the comfort zone? Know about the comfort zone? Okay, the comfort zone was a concept that was discovered, I won't say invented, discovered by IBM. What they tried to do was they had this beautiful idea. They take the manager of their best-selling district and swap him out with the manager of their worst-selling district. And sure enough, the manager of the best-selling district brought sales up in the worst-selling district. But they got a real shocker, because the manager from the worst-selling district brought sales down in the best-selling district. So they tried to figure out why. And they discovered this thing called comfort zones. And whether you believe it or not, it actually works that we all individually have a comfort zone. If things are really shitty, we'll do whatever it takes to at least survive. Won't say we'll make it good, but at least survive. We'll bring ourselves up into the bottom of our comfort zone. The real trick, and this is apropos of what I said about whether I like the painting or not. If we do something better, better than what we expect, what we know we can do, if we're uncomfortable with it, we'll do whatever it takes to make it less so, till we are comfortable with it. I've had so many experiences. I have this critiquing party every once in a while, and we have this one artist who always brings a painting, and in most instances he'll say, I need you guys to tell me what's wrong with this. And we'll all say, nothing, it's the best thing you've ever done. Because he's uncomfortable with it. He wants to change it. So what I'm saying is, if you're uncomfortable with your paintings, sit with them. You will either move your comfort level up to them, or you'll actually discover what's wrong with them. But don't change them just because you're uncomfortable with them. So that's apropos of, being the first on your list of who you're painting for. Okay? Let's go to the last question. Am I afraid to be wrong? And that's, again, apropos of who am I painting for. Because so many of my students are afraid to just dive in and do it because they're afraid to make a mistake. And if you take a workshop, that's why you're there, is to make mistakes and learn from them. The only time we ever learn is when we make mistakes. It's the only time when anything gets any better. Okay? Any questions, any comments on those at the moment?
I have a question.
Yes?
When you're a professional painter, as you are, and you're painting for galleries, that number 3 one, who am I painting for?
Mm-hmm.
And the gallery says, we need 3 more Spanish ladies, or 7 more Spanish ladies. How do you handle that? And you feel at that point you want to maybe paint castanets or something instead of Spanish. How do you handle that?
You first and foremost have to paint for yourself. If you decide to paint a painting that a gallery, in a genre that a gallery has asked for, first and foremost make sure that it's what you want to do. Do it for you first. Then if it happens to coincide with what the gallery wants, great. If you absolutely don't want to do it, no matter what you do, it's not going to work. So you can compromise, but don't compromise with your own standards. Okay? You can always find a spot where you both agree. I think that's the important part of that. Any other questions on that one? On any of them? Okay. Well, see what else I got here. That's the other thing about Home Depot. It promotes do-it-yourself. Okay? And what I mean by that is I have spent almost an hour up here showing you what I do. I learned about the 1.5" brush myself through trial and error. I learned about 5 colors myself through trial and error. Take classes, yes. Go ahead and do studies. But as Robert Genn says again and again, speaking of Genn, Robert, in his newsletters, right? Classes are great, organizations are great, but there's nothing that is a substitute for self-learning, for getting into your studio all by yourself and figuring it out. Because other people aren't going to be able to tell you what you need. They will give you a hint as to where to look, but they're not going to be able to tell you what you need. On that note, I have some classes. This is the advertising portion of this program. Like Home Depot. They have ads right there in the midst of their flyer. Style workshop. I'm putting on a style workshop at the Coast Collective. Now, most of my workshops are teach you how to paint with an 1.5" house painter's brush and 5 colors. But the style workshop is not. Style workshop grew out of all my classes. I have had people come back again and again. There was a time when I had this one student, she was there at every class, and then one class she didn't show up. I expected her to be there. And I phoned her up and she says, well, I've taken your class so much I have to go out and find out what my style is. And I realized, yes, good idea. Now, I've spent all my life trying to figure out what my style is, and everybody does that. It's a lifelong process. But I realized that some people would like a little kickstart, would like a little seed to get them going. So I started the style workshop. The style workshop is a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. At the Coast Collective, you can find information on it. My next one is,
Where is that?
Coast Collective is in Esquimalt Lagoon in Victoria.
What are the dates?
Anybody got a calendar? Anybody got a calendar? It's the third weekend of June, I believe. Just to give you a quick overview of how the style workshop works, we sit down on the Friday night and we talk about what style is, and then we have a slideshow of 475 images from art history. And what each individual does with a clipboard and a piece of paper is write down, stop as you like a piece comes up, and you write down what you like about it. Now, I'm not talking about, oh, it's beautiful, oh, it's big, oh, it's whatever. I'm talking about it's figures, it's blue, it's high contrast. And as we go through them, you will find you're adding more and more check marks to certain items. And those are the things that you are visually attracted to. And when you're visually attracted to something, that's how you paint. That's how you approach it. So that's what the style workshop's all about. And then on the weekend, we actually come back and do paintings based on what your tick marks are for. Yes?
Oh, I just wanted to ask you, I'm going back to something you said before. When you reach a point where you end up asking your wife,
Yes?
then where do you go from there? You know what I mean? You've done something I'm 100% happy with.
Yes, again, if I'm not 100% happy with it to the point where I'm asking my wife if she likes it, invariably she will say either yes or no, that she either likes it or doesn't like it, at which point it's back in my plate and I have to figure out whether it's working or not. So I have to sit with it. I have to wait for it to talk to me. You know, everybody says, when do you know when your painting's done? I never know when my paintings are done. They just stop talking to me.
There was one artist I went to here at Painters last time. They had a easel that they just had their working painting on, so they could just look at it now and then to see if it was done.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, some people, I only work on one at a time, but some people have 5 or 6 going, and then so they'll go back to it. One of the things about that particular process for some artists is that what they do in this one will stimulate an idea on this one. The problem with me is that I focus so hard on doing one, I can't possibly imagine changing focus in the middle of that. And it only takes me 6 to 8 hours, exactly. Or 6 to 8 months. If it doesn't work in 6 to 8 hours, it takes me that long to figure out why. Okay, so Style Workshop at Coast Collective.
The 24th, 25th, 26th.
Sorry, when is it?
24th, 25th, 26th of June.
24th, 25th, 26th of June is the Style Workshop. Painting the figure at Island Blue. This is my 2-day workshop. I supply this kind of photo reference because we don't have time to take the photographs. So it's that I teach you the big brush, the 5 colors, the gridded canvas. You get immersed in painting this style. All I ask is that you immerse yourself for 2 days in the style and take away whatever it is you want. You know, you can drop it like a hot potato at the end of it if you wish. Island Blue is in Victoria as well.
Are these all on your website?
These are all on my website. They are indeed. When am I coming to the mainland? As soon as somebody calls me up and says, we want to do a workshop with you on the mainland. And we'll do it that way. Okay, Through Artist's Eyes is another workshop at Post Collective. This is my baby. This is my specialty. We're not doing this one till October. This is for women only. There's only 5 in the class. This is a workshop that is a combination painting and self-discovery. Because it's 5 women only, we get together as a group, then we set up modeling sessions. Each woman models in the nude for a private, wait for it, for a private modeling session for the camera. Then we get together as a group on the weekend and each woman paints a painting of herself. Yeah. When I introduce this, okay, Hands up, how many, okay, hands up, how many are thinking, there's no bloody way I'm doing that? Okay, I want to see the 10% hands up who say, what a great idea. Excellent. There is no way that you can spend a weekend criticizing your body when you're looking at yourself as a work of art. Okay, that's the purpose of it. And you can find that again on the website at Corporate Collective. Okay, and a particular little thing, I was asked to do a painting flamenco in Spain. This is next spring, but unfortunately they need deposits by middle of June. And there's the website, or part of my website for information on that. It's 10 days, May 7th to the 17th of 2012 in a lovely little place called El Molino in Spain. We are going to have a flamenco model come. We're going to photograph her. We're going to drink sangria, eat wonderful food. We're going to paint. We're going to go watch a flamenco performance in Cordoba. And again, you can find information on that. If anybody's interested in that, by the way, I do have brochures, not a lot. So those who are really interested, please come up and see me. And you can get information of them. As I say, unfortunately, for them to book the spot, they need the deposits by the middle of June of this year. But it is worth it. It is worth it. You want to meet Gonzalez? Well, you should come then. Come paint. I don't do any plein air painting. It's hard to find nudes outside. Or yeah, we could go to the beach in Europe. We're going to the beach in Europe. Okay. Okay. There's my website. You can find all of my classes on my website. By the way, at the bottom of the front page on my website is a little button for my newsletter. If you want to click that, you can subscribe. I only send it out 4 times a year. Plus, in my newsletter, there are video tutorials. Now, for those who are interested in this flavor of Spain getaway, basically my talk's over. I've got a little video I just want to run. It's 8 minutes. And you can sit and watch it, okay? Ready? Let's do it.